I'm gonna show you something beautiful.
Hello everybody. Recently, Ben Shapiro had a feminist on his YouTube channel discussing an article that she wrote titled "Originalism is Sexist." Now, her point of view is pretty typical of what you expect from a feminist these days. And I feel like Ben Shapiro made a great argument to what she was saying. I wanted to give my thoughts on this because some of the rhetoric that she was spewing, I'm just so tired of hearing and so tired of seeing. So let's take a look.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So what you actually wrote is you wrote that Gorsuch, like Antonin Scalia, is a proponent of originalism, which means he believes a judge should attempt to interpret the words of the Constitution as they were understood at the time they were written. When the Constitution was written, women couldn't own property. In 1787, women didn't have the right to vote. It would be 133 years before women won that fight, a fight they fought for 72 years. Considering women had no rights when the Constitution was written and there was no mention of women in the Constitution, originalism is sexist. So let me ask you first to expand on that. Is it the Constitution that's sexist or originalism that's sexist or both?
Well, actually, the original Constitution is sexist.
I have to stop her right there. The original Constitution is sexist. That's the biggest problem with these fucking people is they don't realize, or it doesn't seem like they realize, that back then when the Constitution was first wrote was a different time. Things were done a different way. People thought things that we now think are wrong or know that are wrong, back then they didn't find wrong, such as slavery. Back in the day, it was okay to own slaves. Now we know that it was wrong, and that's why we don't own slaves anymore. So you can't look back then and be like, that person's racist. Nowadays, yes, they would be seen as a racist because they would think it's okay to own people. But back then, it wasn't. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for racism or anything like that, or sexism. But you do have to understand that it was a different time. The thought process of people were different. So calling the original Constitution sexist is bullshit.
And then the originalist perspective that actually looks to the original document is also sexist. And so we know that when a judge practices originalism, they look backwards. They don't try to see the Constitution in the current context of society. And so by looking backwards, as I said in my piece, at the time the Constitution was written, women didn't have any rights.
Looking backwards. She just said that, looking backwards. That's all you fucking people do is look backwards. The feminists, the social justice warriors, the fucking liberals of nowadays, all you fucking people do is look backwards. You look backwards and you bitch about fucking women didn't have the right to vote and shit like that. Social justice warriors and black people were slaves and that was bullshit. All you fucking people do is look at the past and bitch about it. As if you can fucking change it. As if there's anything you can fucking do about it. The past is past. It's done and over with. Start looking to the fucking future. Stop worrying about shit that happened in the past and worry about what's going on now. That's why you people are called regressives.
We were property. So,
wait a minute. Did she just say that women were property?
Two quick things. One, you're right, obviously. The women did not have rights under the Constitution in many ways. The idea that they were property is an overstatement. They couldn't be sold into slavery. I mean, black people were property. Women were not property under the Constitution of the United States.
First of all, I want to say, thank God he called her out on that women are property bullshit that she tried fucking coming up with. Second of all, notice how all she did is sit there and nod her head? She realizes she tried pulling a fucking fast one there. Tried slipping some fucking bullshit lie in there about women being property, and got fucking called on it. If there was any fucking truth to that whatsoever, I'm pretty sure she would have fucking put up an argument about women being property. She knows that she was bullshitting. She knows she was fucking lying. And that's the type of fucking bullshit I'm so fucking sick of.
Because what do you think a judge's job is? Right? I mean, a judge, from where I sit, and according to the structure of the Constitution, his job is to interpret the law as it's written, not to make up what he wishes the law were. That's what we have legislatures for. That's why we have people who vote on things. The idea that you're going to have some sort of super legislature made up of the great wise men or women who decide what a text means that has nothing to do with the original meaning of the Constitution. What do you think a judge's job should be?
Well, so what an originalist actually does, though, is goes even beyond that interpretation to an originalist thinks that the 14th Amendment, which would actually give women equal protection, based on what we know from Justice Scalia, he didn't actually think that that protected women. And so he thinks that equal protection does not prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. An originalist like Scalia also feels that the right to privacy is not included in the Constitution. And so I understand what a judge's job is, but then we also have, thankfully, the legislature.
So he asks her what she thinks a judge's job should be, and then talks about legislature and shit like that. And then she agrees with him and says, thank God that's what we have the legislature for. Or thankfully that's what we had the legislature for. Whatever it is. But she agrees. So what's the problem? Why is the Constitution sexist if you agree that that's what legislature is for? Oh, because feminists need problems. They need something to fight about because they don't realize they do have equal rights.
So again, I ask you, you're upset at the outcome of some of what the judges say because the judges are reading the text according to what texts mean. I mean, it's not poetry. But what do you think a judge should do that is distinct from what a legislature does?
Well, to answer that, I mean, what now is happening is so the legislature passes a policy to give women greater access. Let's use Hobby Lobby, since that's a case that Neil Gorsuch, ruled on. The Congress passed healthcare reform to allow women to have greater access to birth control. And when that then went through the court process, because conservatives argued against that, when it went through the court process, it was ruled down. And so we might have the legislature, yes, we have judges, but with an originalist perspective, like Neil Gorsuch's and like Scalia's, when we try to progress women through public policy, it then is still being shot down in the courts because that originalist perspective, as I mentioned, is a sexist perspective.
Okay, so again, the problem is that, take Hobby Lobby as an example. It wasn't that Neil Gorsuch is against contraception, presumably. His church apparently is pro-contraception. The idea that Neil Gorsuch has a personal view that's anti-contraception, that's not accurate. Neil Gorsuch's view is that there's a First Amendment to the Constitution which protects the freedom of religion of people like the religious owners of Hobby Lobby, and said that they don't have to violate their own religion in the provision of health care. Now, you may disagree with that policy. That's why we have an amendment process. So the Constitution does basically enshrine certain fundamental rights. If we disagree with those fundamental rights, there's an amendment process. Or do you think that we should just get rid of the Constitution completely? Because it seems to me that's sort of what you want. We shouldn't have judges. We shouldn't have judicial review. We shouldn't have a Constitution. We should just have a legislature that does all the things that you want them to do, or judges that just say the legislature can do all those things.
There's a lot here, but I wanted to point out two things that Ben Shapiro says. One, he talks about the freedom of religion in the First Amendment, and how these people should not have to do anything that goes against their beliefs in religion. So be it. They don't want to do contraceptives and blah, 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 then that's their right. Two, he brings up about legislature getting rid of the Constitution and putting something together that's just something that basically agrees with her points of view. And that's the thing about these people is people like her sit there and say they want this, that, and another thing, but really all it is they want people to agree with them. That's it. They don't care how it happens. She's gonna sit there and say, I want, the Constitution is sexist and this is sexist, but really there's no care about that whatsoever. It's all about my thoughts and my opinions, and I want people to agree with them, and I want people in these offices and jobs and blah, blah, blah that agree with me. And that's how these people are. Or
we could amend the Constitution. And women did try that through the Equal Rights Amendment, but that too didn't make it through.
Right.
What you just said makes no sense whatsoever. You say that amending the Constitution will solve the problem, except the whole thing is about the Constitution being sexist, and these originalists are sexist because they interpret the Constitution from its original text. You just got done talking about how these originalists don't even pay attention to the 14th Amendment, apparently. So what good does amending the Constitution do? I think you just want to amend it so that it literally says something about women in it. I think that's what you want, and that's why you're going on about this bullshit of it being sexist. That's it. It's not because you find anything sexist about it. You just want to make sure women are worded in there specifically to be included into it. Person and persons and people isn't good enough. You want it to say women.
This is why we have legislatures. The point is that I'm in favor of availability of contraception. This is why I would elect people who would be in favor of availability of contraception. If you just want the courts to do what you want them to do, why not just appoint a couple of oligarchs? We can have Ruth Bader Ginsburg be our queen, and then we don't actually have to have a legislature anymore. We can skip all these expensive election things. Donald Trump wouldn't be president, and the notorious RBG would just rule us all.
The problem for women in this country is that when we pass public policies to increase our rights, they are then shot down by the court, who doesn't believe what you just explained, that we don't have a right to privacy or that we don't have equal protection under the law. And so that's
not accurate. There are dozens of states that had already legalized abortion in large part before Roe v. Wade, and the courts had never struck that down on any grounds. I mean, now you're reversing it. I mean, the fact is that if a state legislature passes a law that makes availability of contraception a thing, that's still not the same thing as for example, Hobby Lobby, where you're actually forcing people to pay for your contraception in violation of their religious obligation.
I love that she tries lying once again, and he jumps on her and immediately is like, "No, that's bullshit. You're full of shit with that." Like, like what's her argument here? I mean, at least he's not lying. I'll give him that. Like, I don't agree with everything Ben Shapiro says, but he's not at least trying to come up with another fucking bullshit lie.
So if you're just talking about access to health care, then a state is perfectly capable of passing whatever law that it wants, and the courts won't strike it down. There are countervailing interests in some of these cases under the Constitution, and that's what the Supreme Court is talking about in an originalist jurisprudence. But if you want to pass a constitutional amendment, go for it. Again, I guess my final question is this, and I unfortunately have to let you go because it's an interesting conversation, but my final question is this. Why bother having elections? Why bother having legislatures? Why do you, if the American people are constantly doing things that are stupid, or if the American people are constantly electing legislatures that are terrible, and if we can just have judges who are going to be able to apply the Constitution as you see fit, again, I ask, why not just appoint Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the actual queen of the United States, and she can rule from above, and she'll do all the things you want? And why isn't that okay with you? I mean, tyranny with someone who you agree with seems okay with you a little bit.
Tyranny is never good, and right now I feel as though we're under a tyranny.
Why? What is it? Again, I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm just wondering what he's done exactly. But we can get into that in a bit. That
would be another conversation for another time.
I'm going to let the feeling like I'm in a tyranny now slide because she was joking. I'm sure. I'm going to make that assumption anyway. I'm not going to punch down at that because it's obviously ignorant if she wasn't joking. But Ben Shapiro brings up a good point, you know, I mean, because clearly that's what she wants. She's not, you know, he brings up like legislature and states and being able to overthrow different things and whatnot. But that's not what she wants. That's not what these people want. They want people that see things their way and that's it. Nothing else. Their way or the highway. And if you don't see it their way, you're sexist or racist or fill in the blank with whatever buzzword you want. And so, yeah, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they want just make some person, whatever her name was that Ben Shapiro threw out there, make her queen of the fucking United States and be done with it. And then that's it. You have everything your way all the time. You don't have to worry about voting anymore. You don't have to worry about losing elections like Hillary Clinton or anything like that. But I mean, she disguises it, you know, like, oh no, I don't want a tyranny. Of course not.
No, I certainly think checks and balances are what we need in this country. You know, I'd end by saying what we haven't tried in this country is equal representation. And so maybe when we get a legislative body that is equally men and women, and we get a Supreme Court that's equally men and women, we might see
What about when we have an electorate that's 54% women? At that point, can we say that we have equal representation because most people who vote are women?
Nope, not yet.
Why not? What happened to the women? Are they all slaves?
Well, we might have equal voting, but we do not have equal representation in any of our bodies of government. And so until we have that, I think we'll see a big difference in the policies and the rights we have as women in this country.
I'm so sick of this whole representation bullshit. We need black people to represent black people. We need Mexicans to represent Mexicans and Asians and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. We need women to represent women. No, you don't. We need people to represent the people of the United States. And that's it. No more, no less. That's all it needs to be. I'm so fucking sick of this. Like, no one should be looking out for a race at all. Whether it's black, white, no one should be looking out for males and females. They should be all looking out for the best interest of the people. And what's with this whole thing of you need the even amount of people representing someone? Why do you need 4 women on the Supreme Court to represent all women? One can't do enough? It takes more than one to say, hey, I'm looking out for the women's point of view? What does that accomplish, having more than one? I mean, I don't care if there's more than one. Have at it. But this whole, there has to be the same amount as women as men. Or then it's sexist if there's not? I mean, what? Come on. It's just so fucking ridiculous.
Woman is not really a female voter if she elects a man. I'm confused again by like
No, not at all. I just think that, to your point of should we have just a judicial branch ruling all, I was answering that. No, we need equal representation in all leadership bodies in this country. And so I was speaking to that piece.
Okay.
I think it's fantastic we have both men and women voting for both men and women.
Okay, so Ivanka Trump for president then. She's a woman, so yay.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, well, I appreciate you taking the time. Jillian Gilchrest, very kind of you to come on. Feminist advocate from Connecticut. She's at the political advocacy. She teaches political advocacy at the UConn School of Social Work. And if people want to find her work, what's the best way to get in touch?
Great. They can find me on Twitter.
I don't care what your Twitter is. And, you know, Ben Shapiro might have been making a joke about Ivanka Trump, but I mean, her attitude towards it, and you say what you want. I mean, she could have been just playing along with the joke, whatever. Her whole attitude of like, I don't know about that. That just goes to show, man. Like, there you go. You got someone who could be woman president, but it's not someone with her point of view. It's not someone with her opinions. I mean, that's, again, to go back to what I said before, that's all these people really care about. They want people to go by their thoughts and opinions and beliefs. It's not about more women or equal rights for women or any of that bullshit. It's just about getting their opinion, and that's it. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Leave your comments down below, like this video, all that jazz. See you next time.